The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back to the X-Zone, one and all. My name is Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network. If you'd like to give us a call, our toll-free number is 1-877-528-8255. Now, that is toll-free throughout the U.S., Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii at 1-877-528-8255. Our email address is xzone@talkstarradio.com. On MSN Messenger, you can chat with us here in our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada by using the MSN address talkstarradio@hotmail.com and our website, www.xzoneradio.com. Joining me this hour is Mark Macy, and Mark is a well-known researcher in ITC, the use of TVs, radios, and other equipment to get in direct contact with the world of the spirit. Now, during the next hour, he's going to tell us exactly what ITC stands for. Mark says he's talked to deceased colleagues on the phone, and he has a unique process that lets him take pictures of people with a Polaroid camera so that sometimes spirits actually show up clearly in the picture. Departed loved ones, spirit guides, famous dead celebrities. He's written 3 books about his work, and they can be found on his website at www.worlditc.org. He's also worked with the Monroe Institute to produce a CD, Bridge to Paradise, which takes listeners on a tour of the spirit worlds. Mark is now busy writing a 4th book and working in Los Angeles, producer on a documentary about his amazing work. He contends with a lot of skeptics, and as you can imagine, he makes a pretty good case, as you'll see. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rob. It's always great to be back. Thank you.
Mark, can you tell our listeners who may be just hearing you for the first time what ITC means, or what's its definition?
Basically, it's instrumental transcommunications, the use of technology to get in touch directly with the worlds of spirits.
Okay. Now, how did you get into working with this kind of technology?
It started back early 90s, around 91, I guess. I was pretty skeptical myself, and I needed some kind of proof or good solid evidence to convince me of something that was that far beyond my understanding, something like the afterlife.
Yes.
And then, since I had had cancer just a few years earlier, I finally really wanted to know what happens to us after we die. So I ran into a fellow who was involved in this work, this ITC, named George Meek, and the things he showed me really convinced me. I mean, if the things he showed me were for real, it was the only good, solid, real evidence that I had ever seen that there was an afterlife.
Do you think the fact that you were faced with the possibility of dying yourself, that something might have been turned on within you to accept what you were about to learn?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's very true, although I wasn't ready to accept it on faith. There's nothing wrong with faith, I know, but for me, I just needed some kind of proof, and this is the only thing I found that really gave me the proof.
How did you feel when you saw the proof?
Well, it was like as though I'd been tense all my life, and suddenly I could relax. Like, I don't know, like holding my breath for a long time, and finally I could breathe. It was just so refreshing to be able to really know that if this evidence was for real, then I wouldn't have to. We wouldn't have to be uncertain anymore. I would just know. It was just really a relief, I guess.
Mark, stand by, young man. You and I have to take a commercial break. Mark Macy's our very special guest. He is a well-known researcher in ITC. And you can find out more about Mark, how to get his books, at his website at www.worlditc.org. That's www.worlditc.org. If you'd like to give us a call and ask Mark any questions, the lines are open at 1-877-528-8255. My name is Rob McConnell, and this is the X Zone. Mark Macy and I return in 2 minutes as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, right here on Talkstar. Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits, and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, old Florida cuisine at its best. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone radio show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Are you interested in the paranormal, ghosts, UFOs, or psychic phenomenon? Join me, Tim Bartley, co-host of Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, coming mid-January 2017 to the XZBN. We will channel spirits live and talk to them, revealing all kinds of amazing information. Spiritual attachments will be found and removed on the show, and so much more. To find out when you can listen to Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, visit www.xzbn.net for listeners on both sides of the veil.
Mark Macy's our special guest, and Mark, starting out as a skeptic and actually seeing the proof must have been, we talked about how it was a revelation, and I was wondering if you could tell us what the proof that you saw was that changed your life forever.
There were two pieces. The first one was George Meek's wife had died the previous year, and shortly after she got settled in on the other side, she sent George a letter through a computer, and the letter had 3 very personal items from their life together that only she and George knew about. And the letter came through a computer in Europe while George was at home in North Carolina. So there was no way that unless the researchers in Europe and George were colluding, which I know was not the case. They knew nothing about these incidents in the letter. Another one was what we would call a cross-contact. A researcher in Luxembourg received a picture of a deceased girl in their computer, and at the same time, Adolf Holmes in Germany received a similar picture through his television in Germany. And so our spirit friends would choreograph these cross contacts to give us reassurance that these are for real.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do we explain the fact that someone who died is able to send a message on a computer?
You know, it's a pretty complicated answer to that. But as far as we don't know all the answers, but from what we know is what we do know is that the spirit worlds are not somewhere far off in space, so they don't have to transmit to us through the internet or through the public airwaves or anything like that. The spirit worlds are superimposed over our world, and people in spirit are always moving in and out of our world and in and out of our lives. Just we can't perceive them, but they're always here with us from many different levels of spirit. So when our spirit friends make contact with us through our equipment, they actually just come into our home or come into our lab, and they have ways of kind of putting on a dense body or lowering the vibration of their spirit body to where they become dense enough to where they can work with our equipment. That's the best way I can describe it in fairly simple terms.
Mark, what's the difference between ITC and EVP?
Okay. EVP started back in the 50s when audio taping was becoming popular for the first time. People would tape conversations and music and nature sounds, and sometimes they'd play it back and they'd hear these tiny voices on tape, voices that they could not hear while they were recording, but they would listen very closely, and the voices would last 1 or 2 seconds. And we've found that just about anyone in a fairly dense spirit body who wants to be close to the earth for a moment can manifest these little voices on tape. Now, ITC takes a major effort among a group of people in spirit and a group of people on earth. And when they're working together, their attitudes and their thoughts create what our spirit friends call a contact field. It's like the pool of all the thoughts and the attitudes of everyone involved in the project. And if everyone's in harmony, then the field becomes clear, and our spirit friends can come in and do miraculous things with our equipment. But if there's dissonance in the form of fears or mistrust or doubts, then the field becomes cloudy and it becomes difficult for them to work with us and our equipment. So we're learning some new spirit world physics type things that impinge on this ITC research. And whereas EVP has been going on since the 50s, these more elaborate forms of ITC contacts, which involve a lot of resonance among many people, they've only been going on since the late 1980s and early 90s.
Mark, what is the criteria for spirit connecting or contacting someone using ITC instead of EVP?
Well, you know, like I said, it takes a team effort for the most part on our side, and also when I had an international group between 1995 and 2000. We would meet once a year, and we were always in contact through the mail and through fax machines. And during that period of time, we found out that there was a group of ethereal beings or angelic beings working with our spirit group. And these ethereal beings made contact. They said they followed our world for thousands of years, and we found that they had tremendous energies and powers that could kind of open the bridge for our spirit friends to make contacts. So the contacts were facilitated by ethereal beings. And I don't know if we could actually open up these communication bridges like we had. I don't know if we could open them up without the support and protection of these ethereal beings.
Are the electronics of today really necessary for ITC?
You know that a lot of people think that we have to have specialized equipment for ITC, and although there have been some specialized devices made, what we found most effective were just our basic off-the-shelf telephones and radios and TVs and computers under the right conditions, which includes a sort of a marriage between the energies of the person and the electromagnetic energies of the equipment. then those basic pieces of technology can work pretty well.
Have you been able to isolate the vibrational rate that is required for ITC?
No, that's something, unfortunately, we humans have not come up with a way yet to quantize or to measure the life energies or the conscious vibrations of life the way we can measure electromagnetic energies. So, in fact, our spirit friends talk about vibrations that are lighter and subtler for the finer realms, and that are kind of darker and denser in more.
Mark, when you're communicating with the spirit world using ITC, are the responses immediate, or is there a lapse between the question being asked and the answer being received?
That's a good question. It's when you have a good ITC channel open, it's just like talking to someone, just talking conversationally to somebody. The answers are immediate. So
it'd be like you and I talking right now?
Yes. Yeah, some of the phone calls we've received have been just regular dialogue like this.
Are there any questions that the spirit world considered to be out of bounds?
Yeah, they on one occasion, I don't remember the subject, unfortunately, but the spirit team came back and said they talked about parallel physical worlds,
right?
And they said if you had certain knowledge, you could wake up the next morning in a parallel world, which seems kind of like science fiction. And it took me months, if not years, to reconcile that comment and other comments similar to that kind of still boggle my mind a little bit.
What do these spirits tell us about our future? Do they have the ability to know what we are going to do?
Yeah, they say they've called it fields of possibilities. They can't pinpoint a lot of things very definitely in the distant future, but they can see certain patterns emerging and spinning off into different directions. And they talk about fields of possibilities. They said one thing. They said there was a civilization way back before Babylon, and there was a temple on the same site as Babylon would emerge, they said, thousands of years later. And the civilization at the time they were describing was going into a dark period. They had been they had a golden age, and now they were entering a dark period. And they said some of these beings meeting in this temple were going to reincarnate at a time when there'd be like people moving behind glass, referring to television sets, and voices speaking from boxes, talking about radios. So these priests back in this temple were talking about reincarnating now, in our time, when we were entering the next huge dark age. So they've kind of implied that we have another major dark age coming, but they didn't say how long, how close we are to that or anything like that. And I haven't really dwelt on that kind of doomsday scenario, but that's one thing that kind of sits in the back of my mind.
Now, do you always speak to or communicate with the same spirit?
We have a spirit group who's been working with us since about the since the early 90s, and for some reason, this one member of that spirit group named Konstantin Raudive, who was a pioneer in EVP before he died, he started making the most contacts with people, and I received about almost a dozen telephone calls, and they were all from him. So, and he also called a number of my colleagues also, but he's not the only person who's made contact. There have been quite a number of them.
All right, please stand by. Mark, you and I have to take our break for the news at the bottom of the hour. When we come back, David in Ottawa would like to ask us a couple of questions, and we'll be taking David's call. And any other member of the X-Zone Nation who'd like to give us a call at 1-877-528-8255. That's toll free at 1-877-528-8255. My name is Rob McConnell, and this is the X-Zone. Mark Macy's our special guest. His website is www.worlditc.org. Mark and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues live and around the world from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, exclusively on the Talkstar Radio Network. Don't go away now.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Mark Macy's our very special guest, and Mark's website is www.worlditc.org. Welcome back to the X Zone. Our toll-free number is 1-877-528-8255. Let's go to our phones. Brandy, we have David in Ottawa joining us now. Hi, David. David, are you there? All right, I guess David, let us know when David does say something. Brandy will bring him on here. Mark Macy, thanks very much for joining us. Mark, I'm still at a bit of a loss to understand how somebody from the spirit world uses a technology that doesn't exist over there, or does technology exist over there?
Yeah, they say they do have equipment on their side. It's not built in factories the way it is here, but it's more or less manifested by the mind. Most of in fact, the entire structured reality they live in, which is kind of a paradise world, it's formed largely by the collective thoughts and expectations and beliefs of the people who live there. And so they have computers and
so they've got a collective consciousness there.
Yes.
Why can't we communicate with them and get some advice on how we can solve some of the problems that are facing us in this present spot on the time-space continuum?
Well, they try to give us advice in many ways, advice and support, but most of us have kind of closed down our what we'd call psycho-spiritual sensitivities to where we can pick up clearly on what they're trying to tell us. But if we learn to listen closely through meditation and that kind of thing, we can usually get some pretty good insights. And
but Mark, why do we need meditation when ITC works?
That's a good it's a good question. ITC doesn't work as regularly as we'd like. I mean, when we get contacts, it's not because we want them. It's because the conditions are right and they're able to come through the equipment. And they have given us a lot of answers to questions that we've posed them about different things. They've, for example, they told us there used to be a world called Marduk or Eden that was inhabited by superhuman beings who had colonized the Earth, and they blew up their world through advanced technologies. And so the colonists here on Earth were stranded, and they were the last living Edenites, basically. And over time, they crossbred with the primitive, more animalistic type humans, and that's where the old myths about the fall of man from grace in the Garden of Eden came from, and that's also where modern humanity came from, is from this crossbreeding. They've given us information like this that really boggles the mind and takes a lot of stretching to fit into the paradigms that we've created for ourselves. But they do tell us a lot of amazing things, and they do give us advice on how to behave. But we have this animal side that makes it very difficult for us to behave in the way that would be in the best interest of the world. I mean, there's part of us, there's that God side that really wants us to protect the environment, protect animals, be one humanity. But there's that animal side that wants to go out and shoot and kill animals because that's what we've done for so many centuries and millennia. There's another part that distrusts other people and other cultures, and it's that animal side, So they've told us that it's not easy contending with humanity because of this mixed nature we have. But they have tried to give us advice on how to live, but it's just not easy.
All right. Prior to the advent of equipment like the telephone, television, and radio that you are using these days for ITC as well as computers, how did they communicate with us?
They used any means they could to communicate with humanity. In the early days, it was shamans would beat on drums, and spirits would actually speak over the beating drums, and people could hear them. Some people use different media to assist their sensitivities, like crystal balls or tarot cards. But we all have this innate ability to be in touch not only with the physical world, but also with the various realms of spirit through some sort of mental communication. But most of us have shut that down for various reasons, having to do with the power of the five senses to absorb just the physical world and kind of tune us out of the spiritual realms. And also, there are a lot of negative spiritual realms in this world, and if we saw them and had to contend with them every day, it would be pretty taxing, I think. So there are probably many reasons why most people's minds have been shut off from the worlds of spirit.
All right, what other types of communications have you had? All right, you told us about the one with the computer, the telephone. What other communications have been received by people who do ITC? And could we use that example, let me see, in Poltergeist when the little girl is watching the blank screen on her television set except for the snow and she says, "They're here." Is that a form of ITC?
Yeah, it's kind of the spooky version of ITC. Same with the movie White Noise.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the 50s, there were a lot of alien attacks the Earth movies, to stir up the fear. But then we eventually came out with movies like E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah, they were cool.
The same thing is happening with the spiritual type movies. They start out kind of spooky, but eventually we'll get into more realistic type things. And Adolf Holmes, for example, was a researcher in Germany, or he died a few years ago, but he would wake up in a trance-like state in the morning, and sometimes he'd be compelled to experiment with his television set in this half trance-like state. So he'd turn on the TV and he'd aim a video camera at the TV, and then this faces of spirits would show up on his TV set, and he'd capture them on film or videotape. And but he's not, there are a number of people in Europe who are getting the spirit faces showing up on their television sets. So it's not just science fiction, it's really been happening, yeah.
Have you ever received a call from anyone who has heard about you and the work that you do, and they themselves are getting communicated by the spirit world through their electronics?
Yeah, quite a lot. I've talked to a lot of people. I go give a lot of presentations and workshops, and I'm surprised at how many people have gotten phone calls themselves or know of people who've gotten phone calls from a loved one who has died recently. And almost invariably, the person who receives the phone call gets totally spooked out, and so the contact ends right away after just a few words. But if we could, as this becomes more and more prevalent and people begin to accept this into their understanding of the world, And when these phone calls happen, if they can start fostering the communication, kind of talk to the person on the other side, these communications, the telephone calls could last for minutes, maybe 15, 20 minutes or longer. But once we have fear or doubt or any kind of strong negative emotion, it closes down that channel instantly.
You were saying earlier that the people who communicate with you and other researchers via ITC, that it's like utopia on the other side. Do they tell you anything else, Mark? Do they relay messages from others who have passed so that they could validate who they are and what they are saying?
Oh yeah, sure. That's happened a lot. We've gotten a lot of contacts from spouses who have died, and they will say something very personal to the ITC researcher to be given to their spouse who's still living, and it'll be something that only the two of them will have known.
I'm sorry, I'm losing you, Mark.
Okay. The piece of information will usually be something that only the two of them will have known, the husband and wife. For example, a dead husband and the surviving wife. The husband will convey a piece of information through ITC systems to the researchers that the researchers know nothing about, and they will give this information to the wife, and she'll verify it.
Okay. Okay. Now, when this communication is made, and it seems that when people on this side, so correct me if I'm wrong here, you get the other members of a research team of ITC researchers. How do you link? Do you use something like prayer? Do you use something like meditation? Is it focusing? Are you centering yourself? How do you do it? Because I know you're all over the world.
Yeah. When we have our meetings, when we were having our meetings between 1995 and 2000, it was very obvious that everybody was a good friend. I mean, you felt a lot of trust and good, warm feelings toward each person in the group. And so when you went back to your countries and to your own homes and labs, you still felt that. So when you're in communication, you just feel that good feeling toward the people you're working with, and that's what creates that good contact field. When I'm in a mixed group and I want to try to make contacts, my favorite technique is a heart meditation. You move your awareness from the head into the chest, into the heart, so it feels like you're thinking from the heart. And mystics have called the heart the seat of the soul for centuries, And so when you move into the heart space with your thinking, your reasoning power, it just, there's a big shift in your thoughts and your feelings. There's just a warmth that kind of overtakes you and everyone in the group. And to me, that's the best technique I've found.
Are there any specific times of the year when ITC communication is easier or is more frequent?
No, I've kind of thought about that during the times we were experimenting, and it didn't seem to matter whether it was winter, summer, spring, or what month, or even what time of day. When the conditions were right, they just happened, and it could be any time.
Now, once again, you keep saying conditions are right. What are the right conditions?
Well, we don't know all of them, but we do know that there has to be the resonance among the group.
Okay.
And we were told that some people have this capacity, that the way they described it from the other side is their consciousness is like a lance or a spear that can penetrate the veil or penetrate dimensions, and their focused thought can actually create realities. And so when certain people like that go into a sort of trance-like state, their mind just opens things up with the equipment in ways that we don't fully understand. But that's the best. I've thought about it for years, and that's about the best way I can describe it.
Does everyone have the ability to experience ITC, or are there certain restrictions? Besides the right conditions that you and I have been talking about, where it's seems like a camaraderie, a feeling of love, wholeness, togetherness. Have children experienced ITC, or is it just adults who experience ITC?
Well, the ITC that I'm talking about refers to a team effort, teams of people on Earth and spirit working together. As far as phenomena happening to equipment caused by spirit, that can happen, and it does happen quite a lot, with especially among kids are especially open to spiritual sensitivity, and also adolescents with their raging hormones.
Yeah,
that causes a lot of unpredictability too, and so those kind of forces can open up the veil to make phenomena happen, but it doesn't really open a good stable bridge like we're trying to form with this ITC. But it's similar, but it's not quite the same thing.
Mark, stand by. You and I have to take our final break. Mark Macy's our special guest. www.worlditc.org. In the next hour, we have a real exorcist on the show. And we're going to be talking to the good Reverend Daniel about exorcism and religious, paranormal, and occult investigations as the X Zone continues right here on Talkstar. Don't go away.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
19 Sergeant Central. 19 Sergeant check. Officers on the scene.
Hi, I'm Larry Lawson, host of Paranormal Stakeout. With over 36 years in law enforcement, I have learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, UFOs, and extraterrestrials, how we gather the evidence, preserve that evidence, and present it to a jury of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Join me, Larry Lawson, every week on Paranormal Stakeout when, along with my guests, we'll take a journey to prove with indisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Go to xzbn.net for the broadcast schedule and check me out at paranormalstakeout.com.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A soul balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today. www.soulbalancing.world.
Welcome back to the X Zone. Don't forget, X Zone Nation, that this month we start the X Zone Book Club. And if you'd like to see who the authors are, visit www.xzonebookclub.com. The website will be up by the end of next week, and we will also have the list of all the authors who are going to be appearing and when they are going to be on with us and how you can get their books. All that information pertaining to the book club will be posted at www.xzonebookclub.com. Mark Macy's our special guest, and we're talking about communicating with the other side, or should I say having the other side communicate with us. Mark, always great having you with us. Mark's website is www.worlditc.org. Mark, have the spirits or given us any idea of what we can expect in our future? For example, are we going to face another nuclear war? Is the problem with global warming going to be solved? What can we look forward to that's positive?
They're looking forward to a time when stable ITC communication channels can be opened up everywhere, and then information about the other side and information about how humans can act in the best interests of many worlds. Once a good set of stable ITC bridges are open, we can basically have wisdom and love kind of streaming into our world from the finer realms of spirit.
But what are we waiting for?
Well, right now, through experience, I've found that when they do open a stable ITC bridge, eventually egos and personalities on Earth take over in the group, and people start mistrusting each other or saying something that offends somebody, and then it stirs up the conflict. And as that happens, the contact field becomes cloudy. Our team can no longer contact as well, and that's when negative spirits can break into the communication channel and start stirring up more problems among the group. So that's basically what we're waiting for, is to be able to get human nature to the point where we can be in harmony over a period of time, and that is very difficult for humans to do. I've had a very difficult time. Every group I've ever known has had a difficult time doing that.
Do you think we have time left in order to get this all going before the possibility of ITC is a reality?
It seems to go in cycles. These ethereal beings said this is the 7th time they've come close to our world to try to help us through the difficult time, and the intent has always been to try to get us to hook up with these ethereal beings for a long period of time and for a very beneficial relationship for our world. But it's a kind of a toss-up whether that's going to happen or whether we're going to plunge into another dark age. So far, it's not really a toss-up. I guess we've always kind of gone into a dark age.
Mark, I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. We've run out of time. Mark Macy, www.worlditc.org. When I come back from the news at the top of the hour at 6.5 minutes past, I'll be speaking with Reverend Daniel Gargilio. We're going to be talking about occult investigations from the religious aspect as we continue right here live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network. Toll free 1-877-528-8255. My name is Rob McConnell, and this is the X Zone. You're listening to us live and around the world on